Colin Campbell, Royal Author, is with us. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I appreciate this is a kind of a repeat question that I've been asking most of our guests this afternoon, but I mean, does this news shock you? It's clearly very sad news for the Queen, but, you know, this was a man of 99. He'd not been in the best health, but still a sense of shock despite that.
Well, actually, I was surprised that it happened when it did, but I wouldn't say I was shocked. You know, in my book, The Queen's Marriage, I do point out that he had been fighting pancreatic cancer for many years. And the miracle is that he lasted as long as he did.
And was this news ever? I mean, I again, those news of various illnesses and different things that you hear about them. Was that ever made public that he'd been fighting cancer throughout his life?
Well, not throughout his life, only the last bit of it.
Okay, well, throughout his latter part of his life, I apologise.
No, sorry. Yeah, no, it was never made public. You know, it's with the press knew about it, but they sort of thought, out of respect to him, that they wouldn't reveal it because he did not reveal it publicly.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was not a man who liked fuss. You know, he wanted to just get on with things, and he was a very proactive and actually a wonderful man. I mean, to meet him, he really was a wonderful man. And I think we owe him a very great debt because, you know, the Queen is an ordinary woman who's been in an extraordinary situation and has done extraordinarily well. But without Prince Philip, she might not have been as extraordinary as she was because he was an extraordinary man.
Is that what made him extraordinary? Was it the fact that he was very much the glue in this incredibly long marriage and retaining, you know, a very high profile globally throughout that time? Multiple appointments on a daily basis for various patronages and presidencies of different organisations that he held. I mean, was it all of those things that made him an amazing man? What do you think was behind the smile and the sometimes grimace of Prince Philip?
Well, all of that and more. You know, he was highly intelligent. He was very big-hearted. He was a very sensitive man. But he was not somebody who wallowed in weaknesses or his feelings. He got on with the business of living. He had had a very difficult childhood, and it had the most wonderfully positive effect upon him as an adult. You know, having surmounted really the most awful childhood. I mean, his mother went insane. He was farmed out to various relations. He didn't see his father for years. They were in exile. They had no money. He had a very uncertain future at times, and then at other times it was more certain, depending on when the Greek monarchy was restored and when it was in exile. You know, he had a very checkered past.
Yeah.
But he used that to enhance himself as a character. You know, the best people often are those who have had really difficult childhoods and who have surmounted them.
I think that's true. And it's interesting that I described him earlier, despite the fact that he was Greek born, but he was also simultaneously quintessentially British in a curious way.
Well, he was. I mean, his mother actually was born at Windsor Castle. His mother, Princess Alice of Battenberg, was a great-granddaughter of Queen Victoria, if I remember correctly. Yes, she was the great-granddaughter of Queen Victoria. And his grandmother, the Dowager Marchioness of Milford Haven, who had originally been Princess Victoria of Hesse, and then she became Princess Louis of Battenberg before they were demoted in 1917. She lived in Kensington Palace pretty much all of her life. You know, so he was a fully paid up member of the British royal family in an extended version of it.
So how did they end up, to your knowledge, finding themselves impoverished despite the royal connection, the very obvious and firm royal connections?
Because his father was exiled when he was a year old. His father was actually sentenced to death, and it's George V who managed to get the sentence commuted, and he was forced to have a lifelong exile from Greece, which actually was rescinded later on down the line. And they had no money whatsoever because they had no income from Greece.
Yeah.
And his grandfather, King George of Greece, of the Hellenes actually to be more accurate, but they call him of Greece. King George had been a very relatively impoverished Danish prince who was offered the Greek throne. So there was no great deal of money there. Never was a great deal of money there. The Danes were notorious for being the poorest royal family in Europe until one of them ascended the Greek throne, at which point the Greeks became the poorest members of our European royalty.
So in terms of, my goodness, I mean, in terms of before this man had found himself, he married the Queen in 1947. I mean, he'd had several lives before that, it seems. I mean, from being a baby to that point of meeting the Queen, he'd gone on an incredible journey, both domestically in terms of his career, his military service. I mean, there was a CV right there before he even became a member of the current royal family.
Well, he was actually a war hero. He was a genuine war hero. He when the Wallis was gored by another ship, and the boiler room exploded, he went off his own bat to try to save the lives of the 3 stokers in the boiler room. I mean, he was a genuinely very brave and decent man. And he was mentioned in dispatches at the Battle of Matapan. And he actually saved on a later occasion the battleship, the Wallis, which, thanks to his quick thinking and creating a diversion, saved it from being bombed by the Italian Air Force.
And then, latterly, and we've said this many times, Lady Campbell, this afternoon, that, despite that, I mean, he was a dashing character, a very good-looking man, very sharp, and, one would have thought there might be a big old list there of people that would have queued up to marry this war hero, as it were. And yet, despite having that heady position in the Navy, he chose almost a kind of subservient role in marrying the Queen, because that always meant that he was literally and metaphorically 3 paces behind his wife.
Yes and no. Yes and no, because, he loved the Queen and the Queen loved him. Theirs was a really true love story, but he was very much the pater familias. Privately, he was the head of the family and she deferred to him. He's the one who made the decisions as to where the children should go to school. All the nuts and bolts decisions were made by Prince Philip and the Queen deferred to him. Publicly, he was very supportive because he was more royal than the Queen. Yeah. He understood the nature of royalty and the importance of being a prince consort. The fact that he stood behind her and deferred to her position did not in any way emasculate him. I mean, look at what he accomplished, the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, the father of the ecological movement, just to mention 2 things, the tremendous good that he did internationally, not only nationally, internationally. He was bright enough and energetic enough to understand that he would be, as the Prince Consort, given a position of worldwide influence to do good.
Yeah.
And he did it.
And did as well. Listen, it's always lovely to talk. Lady Colin Campbell, Royal Author, thank you. Great to have you with us